Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba back once again to regenerativelumumbaspeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, and of course, in conjunction with our brother station, Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African centered news and information. And of course, we're back with another great show where this is series number 6 and our groundbreaking and audacious, and I would even argue maybe even revolutionary Pan African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where today we're going to be chronicling the life, legacy, and most importantly, the work of one Ella Jo Baker. So if you are unfamiliar with Ella Jo Baker family, you're going to get a crash course, and of course, what I call the Queen Mother, the civil rights organizing. So very quickly, if you are familiar with Queen Mother Ella Jo Baker, put a 1 in the chat. If you're unfamiliar with Ella Jo Baker, Queen Mother Ella Jo Baker, put a 2 in the chat. Just want to make sure we get a lay of the land regarding our brothers and sisters, and if they're familiar with this great ancestor who, of course, committed her life and, of course, legacy to the work of empowering. Okay, Ella May says number 2, and that's pretty wild, Brother Ella May, because Queen Mother Ella Jo Baker was born in VA. Of course, she's from the 7 cities area, particularly Norfolk. So, okay, we want to pull your Virginia card there. I don't know if you're a Cavalier or not, right? This clown there. So once again, family, if you're watching, once again, make sure you hit the subscribe, like button, as well as the notification bell, comment, and share this video. We have some goals in terms of where we want to get a subscribership up to. Of course, the Lumumba Speaks, we want to reach 10K. And for a Bequaline Network, we want to get to 200K. And we can't do that without you all tapping in, being part of the conversation, but also sharing our video. If you know anyone who wants to come in and comment, cares about Pan-African content, cares about content that's truly rooted in helping restore our people to our traditional greatness, Bequaline Network and Lumumba Speaks is the place to be. So definitely want to put that out there before we get started with this great conversation we're having on this evening. Also, happy Pan-African Saturday. Happy Pan-African Saturday. I am in a good mood because, of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes, we won our third this was our third top 5 matchup of the season. And of course, we lost, of course, unfortunately, at the buzzer to Oregon. We beat Penn State. Then, of course, we thoroughly dismantled Indiana. And so up next, we know it's the rivalry game. It is rivalry week. And of course, that means all over Columbus and all over the great state of Ohio, we're going to be marking out the M's, right, on campus and, of course, in the community. And, of course, we know that there's no bigger rivalry than the Ohio State-Michigan game, known as the game. So don't be surprised if you see me posting content throughout the week promoting, of course, the greatest rivalry in all of sports. And, of course, we're going to be seeking to usurp Michigan and punch our ticket to the Big Ten championship game. And our goal, and please excuse my language here, family, but our goal as the Ohio State Buckeyes, the world-famous the Ohio State Buckeyes, is to make Michigan our bitch again, right? So it's just, once again, family, I just let you all know I will be posting frequently this week regarding the game, the rivalry game against the team up north. LMA, I see what you said. You say, damn, you caught me lacking. I got to do some research on her. Carter Wright, brother, because this is the place to do that. Once again, family, if you're watching, this is number 6, part 6 of our Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we're going to chronicle the life, legacy, and, of course, work of great Pan-Africans of the past in order to make a better world for African people in the future. And so on this evening, we're going to be chronicling, once again, the life, legacy, and the work of Queen Mother Ella Jo Baker, who I call the Queen Mother and chief organizer of the civil rights movement. So we get into it, family, but once again, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button, hit the thumbs up bell, notification bell, and make sure you comment and share, because what I said it before, our goal is to get to 10K subscribers on Lumumba Speaks and, of course, 200K subscribers on Bequaline Network. So before we get this conversation started, family, you all know we got to go over the ground rules here at Lumumba Speaks. Diversity of thought is welcome, irrespective if you're on the left, if you're on the right, or you're right down the middle. This is the place to have that conversation, and you are welcome. No racial epithets, no epithets of any kind, as I stated ad nauseum on this platform. This is a space for Black empowerment. We believe in the 3 N's of Black power: self-respect, self-defense, and, of course, self-determination. And so this is not a space where we're putting people down, where we make ad hominems or any way, shape, or form. We're here to uplift and build our people and help restore our people to our traditional greatness. Number 3, facts over feelings. If you disagree with someone, and you may, because this is, of course, is an intellectual conversation, you attack the argument and not the person. I give you one warning. If you cannot abide by those rules, you'll be removed, of course, from the platform. And then last but not least, no fundamentally false statements. You can have an opinion, but you can't make a statement that is patently false. For example, you could be of the ilk, of the belief, of the coterie of believers, right, of witnesses, that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of all time, also known as the GOAT. However, if you were to state that he was the greatest basketball player of all time because Michael Jordan only won 3 championships, that would be a fundamentally false statement. And of course, I would have to tap in and, of course, square things away. And last but not least, our mission here at Bequaline Network in Lumumba Speaks is neither to exonerate or vilify, but to challenge conventional wisdom and re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So, peace, family. Once again, part 6 of our Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we honor the life and legacy of Pan-African leaders throughout history in order to make the world better for African people today and in the future. And today, we're going to be chronicling, examining, highlighting, and lifting up our Queen Mother, great ancestor, Queen Mother of the Civil Rights Movement, great ancestor, Ella Josephine Baker. Of course, she was born December 13th, 1903 in Norfolk, Virginia. Shout out to the Tidewater region of the VA. 7 cities as well. And she transitioned on her birthday, December 13th, 1986, in New York City of natural causes. She was an African-American civil rights and human rights activist. She was a largely behind-the-scenes organizer whose career spanned more than 5 decades. In New York City and the South, she worked alongside some of the most noted civil rights leaders of the 20th century, including W.B. Du Bois, Thurgood Marshall, A. Philip Randolph, shout out to the Brotherhood of Stephen Carter Porters and Mays, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She also mentored many emerging activists such as Diane Nash, Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture, and Bob Moses. Shout out to the Algebra Project. Baker was co-founder of SCLC and SNCC, so we're talking about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and the Southern Christian Leadership Council. Many people may be unaware of this. The formation of SNCC provided a new spirit to the civil rights movement. Soon after the sit-in fever became contagious, the SCLC, Baker persuaded the SCLC to appropriate $800 and had the president of her alma mater, Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, to make its facilities available for an Easter weekend conference of youth leaders. Then the executive director of the SCLC was replaced by Wyatt T. Walker. What ended up taking place was Baker believed that both the SCLC and the NAACP were too cautious and self-centered. She felt that they had not kept pace with the new aggressive tempo of the struggle, and that students had injected into the struggle but the belief that they had the right to direct their own affairs and make their own mistakes. Baker sought to keep the student movement free from adult feathers. As John Lewis remembered, she was much older in terms of age, but I think she was one of the youngest persons in the movement when it came to philosophy and commitment, of course, to civil rights. Baker also criticized the professionalized charismatic leadership model of the SCLC. She promoted grassroots organizing, radical democracy, and the ability of the oppressed to understand their worlds and advocate for themselves. She realized this vision most fully in the 1960s as the primary advisor and strategist of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Biographer Barbara Ransby calls Baker one of the most important American leaders of the 20th century, perhaps the most influential woman in the civil rights movement. She is known for her critiques of both racism in American culture and sexism in the civil rights movement. Also, according to activist Mumia Abu-Jamal, Baker advocated a more collectivist model of leadership over the prevailing messianic style of the period. She was largely arguing against the structuring of the civil rights movement by the organization model of the Black Church, which had largely female membership and male leadership. Baker questioned the gender hierarchy of the civil rights movement and that of the Black Church. Baker, King, and other SCLC members, of course, were reported to have differences in opinion and philosophy during the 50s and 60s. She was older than many of the young ministers she worked with, which added to their attention. She once said, "The movement made Martin and not Martin the movement." When she gave a speech urging activists to take control of the movement themselves rather than rely on a leader with heavy feet of clay, it was widely interpreted as a denunciation of King. Baker's philosophy was power to the people. She believed that a group's force could make significant changes if members worked together. And Ella Jo Baker has been honored throughout history. In 1984, she received the Candace Award from National Coalition of 100 Black Women. Her personal papers are held by the New York Public Library at the Schomburg Center for Black Culture and Research. In 1984, Baker was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. In 1996, the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, a nonprofit strategy and action center based in Oakland, California, was founded and named for her. The Ella Baker School in the Julia Richmond Education Complex in New York City was founded in 1996. In 2003, the Ella Jo Baker International Community Cooperative, a 15-unit co-housing community, began living together in a renovated house in Washington, D.C. The Ella J. Baker House, a community center which supports at-risk youth in Dorchester, Boston, was created in 2005. 2009, Baker was honored with a U.S. postage stamp. In 2014, the University of California at Santa Barbara established a visiting professorship in name of course, Ella Jo Baker. In 2021, the former Woodrow Wilson Montessori School in Houston, Texas, was renamed the Baker Montessori School. And in 2022, Minneapolis Public Schools changed the name of Pre-K-8 Jefferson Community School to Ella J. Baker Global Studies and Humanities Magnet School. So Ella Jo Baker is one of the greatest civil rights leaders and Pan-Africanists of the 20th century. And of course, we would be remiss in our duty if we did not honor her and of course glean from her wisdom and knowledge and her legacy in the work, how to make a better world for African people in the future, family. So the link is in the description and the link is in the chat, family. So tap in, be part of the conversation. I see your comments, Brother Sandman, and be part of the convo once again. Share, comment. Our goal, once again, is to get to 10K subscribers on Lumumba Speaks, 200K on Beacon Network, and we can't do that without the community helping us accomplish that goal. So once again, family, the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Tap in and let's have a conversation about the life, legacy, and of course, most importantly, the work of Ella Jo Baker. You're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com and Beacon Network here on YouTube, and this is part 6 of our Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we chronicle the life, legacy, and work of great Pan-Africans of the past in order to learn how to make a better world for African people in the future. So I would argue, what are your thoughts on Ella Jo Baker's push for having democratic leadership rather than a singular charismatic leader in the model of the Black church? Which leadership model do you all believe is best for African people at home and abroad? So that's the question out there, family. Tap in, be part of the convo. Definitely want to hear what you all have to say regarding the life, legacy, and work of Ella Jo Baker. Another issue that we can, of course, tackle is, what are your thoughts on having young people lead the movement rather than older individuals who are professionals, right? So there's a lot to, of course, unpack here, family, but definitely tap in, be part of the conversation. Once again, if you want to be part of the combo, the link is in the description, the link is in the chat, and you do not have to come up to be part of the combo, and you can use a pseudonym to protect your identity. So here we are, family. Happy Pan-African Saturday. And let's have a great conversation this evening where we honor one of the greatest sisters in the struggle. Once again, family, and if you want to get an understanding of some of the work of Ella Jo Baker, you can read this book, one of the best books I've read in terms of the civil rights movement, written by Dr. Harvard Sitkoff. At the time he wrote this book, he was, of course, he was a professor of history at the University of New Hampshire. And this was the book that was required reading for me in undergrad on the history of the civil rights movement, The Struggle for Black Equality by Harvard Sitkoff, right? And so really details the work of Ella Jo Baker in the civil rights movement. In another text that you should check out, of course, is Sisters in the Struggle. Sorry, the ring light is giving us problems here, but Sisters in the Struggle, African-American Women in the Civil Rights Black Power Movement. And so forth. This is one of the best books I've read in terms of learning about a lot of the work that sisters have done to contribute to, of course, the struggle for Black equality and, of course, the emancipation of Black people at home and abroad. And as we know that sisters being involved in the struggle is a norm in terms of African history, heritage, and, of course, cultural personality. So tap in, family. Be part of the conversation. Looking forward to having a great convo this evening regarding the life, legacy, and work of Queen Mother Ella Jo Baker. So family, tap in. Let us know what you think, what your thoughts are, and we want to hear from you regarding, should young people lead the struggle? And then 2, should we have a singular charismatic leader in the work that we do? Or should we focus on having a more democratic style of leadership? brother LMA that dribbles down the VA. What's the word?
Hey, what's up, Lumuma? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
Man, you caught me lacking, man. I guess I gotta take a trip back to Norfolk and look for maybe some type of museum or something like that. Cause yeah, I wasn't. But was she active in Norfolk, or did she spend most of her time in New York? I know you said she passed away in New York.
Yes, sir. That's a great question. Great question. So she did a lot of her activist work in New York City and in the South.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
But yes, she's a graduate of Charles University, HBCU.
Okay. Yeah, because Shaw's in. No, I'm thinking Shaw. Where's Shaw at?
Shaw was in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But to your question about whether or not movement should be kind of democratized or by a leader, I don't know, man. That's a tough one, man, because there's pros and cons to either one.
Okay,
And
let's unpack.
yeah, so because like I said, if you have a leader, then the leader can kind of be held accountable individually. Like you can, if let's say there's a leader and that leader starts to go wayward, that leader can be, identified and can be held accountable. Whereas if it's a democratized, it's kind of like, how do you, it's not like how can I put it? It's not something you can kind of point to. It's just like almost like a zeitgeist. It's just the, mist in the air. You can't really hold it down. But at the same time, what was our point? But then again, if you have a leader, the leader can then, how can I put it? It can be more effective, right? So if you just have one person, not one person, but like a committee or a small group of people, they can just say, this is where we're going to go, rather than just having everyone kind of doing their own thing. But
so real quick, and I would disagree with if you have a cephalous leadership model in an organization that everyone's doing their own thing. I've been in organizations in which there was an acephalous leadership model, meaning headless. There was no singular individual in charge. Everyone was a co-leader, co-chair, and everyone was held accountable. And we had to come to make decisions based on consensus. So I would argue that from our experience, and of course from reading the literature, that you have accountability in those type of organizations when you don't have a singular leader. But
okay, I mean, well, I mean, to your point, I mean, like I said, I guess it's more or less. You're thinking more organization. I'm thinking more just kind of like grassroots, kind of. Like if I look at the political landscape of Black YouTube, you have personality, almost like the idea of like the red pill ideology that kind of like swept the internet a couple years back. It was just a bunch of. There was no real leaders. You had like bigger names, but it was mostly just a collective, feeling. There was no individual person you can kind of pin this on red pill or black manosphere or whatever. Whereas, let's say you have the ADOS movement that we have now. Like, there's a clear leader of ADOS. There's a clear leader of FBA that you can kind of point to, and you can kind of point to, and they kind of lead them.
One of the issues, and I would argue one of the issues with having a charismatic leadership model is that typically when that charismatic leader is deleted or leaves the movement, the movement falls apart, or organization falls apart. The second issue is what we tend to find is organizations that have a singular charismatic leader tend to fall into being a cult of personality.
Yeah,
we see that
will be my next.
So on and so forth. But if you have a democratic leadership model, you can have people lead the organization, lead the movement, and the work can continue. The second issue I would argue, particularly when we talk about contemporary examples, when we talk about FBA, ADOS, I don't know what it is. I would argue they haven't accomplished really anything. The second issue, hold on real quick. What we tend to find, they simply parrot talking points of the so-called leader. The other issue, when we talk about the manosphere, is the manosphere isn't a movement or organization. It's more so a community where men provide their commentary and share experiences regarding the issues men face in contemporary Western.
That's what you're saying, yeah. So, yeah, you're talking about more of a movement. I'm thinking of I think you're talking about more of an organization. I'm just talking about like a movement that can grow legs or whatever. But I see what you're saying.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
I mean, but to your point, yeah, I think that like I said, I would kind of prefer a democratized movement or organization But I was just pointing out that it could be, what's what I'm looking for? Downsides to both, the pros and cons of both.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
but I would think I would prefer a democratized. But I think that, like I said, it's like the saying, too many chiefs, not enough Indians, too
Not
many
enough
cooks in
Indians,
the
right?
kitchen. Yeah, but
Yeah.
like I said, as long as I think the main thing is, as long as everyone is, excuse me, what's what I'm looking for, on the same page, mission oriented, and it's not about, like you can have disagreements as to how to, if your mission is to take this hill, as long as your arguments are over how to take this hill, not whether or not we should take this hill at all. You know what I'm saying? Or I think that's, like I said, the longest the disagreements can be kept down to a minimum. I think I do believe democratized leadership should be would probably be preferred.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Sandman, what's the word? Straight out of South Jersey by way of the Illidale 215. What's good, brother?
Hey, what's good? Happy Pan African Saturday.
Appreciate
Yeah,
you.
yes, sir. So yeah, so the question is about should the youth lead the struggle?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think it's all wrapped around that whole democracy thing. Um from my understanding, the definition of a democracy is, the majority rules. So as a group, we would have to vote on what we want to do as a group, and then the consensus would will be our guiding factor, and then we will all have to work together, to get the objectives that we wanted to expound upon. So yeah, I think, if we take that democratic approach as opposed to like just having one individual, tell us, guide us in that direction, then I guess that could work. Um, yeah, but I think that we would have to have a leader who would, you know, um, come together, get us all together to, come to that consensus, and vote on it. Um, as for young people in the struggle, yeah, I think all groups of it should be in struggle. Working together. That's the only way that we're going to be able to get things done is by working together, old and young.
Yes, sir.
I guess you're just as old as you feel you are. And yeah, but in reading about Miss Baker, I was the some of the things that I felt was most interesting about her life story was particularly her youth. Coming up, she was born in Norfolk, Virginia, and her father was a worker, worked on the docks,
Mm-hmm.
and he wasn't around the family much. But there was a huge race riot in Virginia, and because of that, her and her mother and the rest of her siblings had to relocate to somewhere safer in North Carolina, while her father continued to work in North Carolina. I mean Virginia, rather, on the docks. I guess to help support the family financially. And in her time growing up, she spoke highly of her grandmother, who was a slave in in the
So yeah,
South.
let's say an enslaved African American rather than calling her grandmother a slave, because we know our ancestors who were enslaved never acquiesced to humanity and always fought against the slaveocracy. So this,
Yeah, yeah. She was her grandmother was in bondage um, before the Emancipation Proclamation. She used to always tell her stories about her encounters while she was in bondage as an African in slavery, and I think the stories that her grandmother told her really impressed upon her, the need to you know, go down the road that she went, because I was just fascinated with all of the things that she accomplished. And she was born in what, the
1903.
1903.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
they call that the greatest generation. Yeah, so if a lady, if Miss Baker is a representation of the greatest generation, I could see why, because those people were relentless, you know, and just yeah, they're the ones that shaped the country that we see today. So yeah, she should have a statue as well in Washington D.C. somewhere if she doesn't already. But one of the stories that her grandmother told her when she was in bondage was her the slave plantation owner rather wanted her to marry another black man that was in bondage. I assume so that he can have more young people to be born into bondage as well. And she refused to do so. And by refusing to do so, she got lashes and whipped by the plantation owner. So those stories, and I think that's what led her to kind of have a resistance against patriarchy, or what do you call it?
But I wouldn't argue that she had a resistance against patriarchy. I think she took umbrage with sexism.
Yeah, sexism is the word. Yeah, she had a problem with that. I think because
she was married at one point, and she was. And I don't mean to cut you off, but one of the things that was rather peculiar about Ella Jo Baker, Queen Mother Ella Jo Baker, and she really set the tone. But she taught subsequent generations of activists to keep their private lives private.
Yeah, that was important too. But the fight today, I think it needs to be focused around, because one of the things that Miss Baker was pushing during her civil rights activism was she was representing consumerism. So she used to hold a lot of meetings and teaching African Americans to get into business, and building networks. She was a huge part of the Harlem Renaissance, which was a hub for a lot of black people who start businesses in New York City. So I think that focus should be brought back, in a democratic fashion, whereas though we all get together and start working together, that's what business is all about, working with other people. So I think that should be the focus, as opposed to, a whole lot of protesting today. Also, one thing that it sounds to me that she was the catalyst that pushed the Democrats to start representing African Americans in the United States. Because from my understanding, she led this protest in Mississippi that forced the Democratic National Convention in Mississippi to accept black people sitting on their board.
But that was also with the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and the work of Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yeah. Right, and she was also did a lot of work with John F. Kennedy too, JFK. Yeah. So yeah, she was spectacular in the work. Yeah, highly respected.
Absolutely. So listen, we got any sisters watching. Once again, sisters are always welcome in these conversations, and we need some more sisters, particularly when we're highlighting some of the queen mothers in the movement for, of course, African people restoring themselves to that traditional greatness. As we know, Marcus Garvey, always said, we were once a great people, and we could be a great people again. So definitely tap in, family, be part of the conversation. Once again, make sure you subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell. Comment and share. We want to make sure we break the algorithm. We're on our way to 10K at Lumumba Speaks and 200K at Beacon Line Network. And this is part 6 of the Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future. And today we're chronicling the life, legacy, and most importantly, the work of Queen Mother Ella Jo Baker, co-founder of the SCLC and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and one of the leading minds of the civil rights movement, who doesn't get her due, and we're going to make sure that we give her flowers on this evening. Happy Pan-African Saturday to you all. You're watching, of course, Lumumba Speaks and the Beacon Line Network. LMA, any thoughts?
No, I'm enjoying the conversation.
Very good, very good. So yeah, once again, I think this is important because from what I was taught, of course, in undergrad, so on and so forth, was that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King really didn't know what he was doing, and it was Queen Mother Ella Jo Baker who was able to actually groom him into leadership. But she told them not only should we move away from this concept of charismatic leadership, which is a derivative of the Black church, but she also argued that it was not only is it unsuccessful, right, ultimately, but it also would get people deleted. It turned out that, of course, she was right. She was right. So just things to consider. And we know oftentimes the reason why the men in the SCLC did not listen to her was because she was a woman, right? So we talk about, unfortunately, when we talk about the work of course, African redemption, African liberation, we want to make sure that we're not, of course, oppressing our own people. Ashe, can I get a Black Power on that? Black Power, right? We want to make sure that we're not oppressing our own people. And part of the issue was I think they would have been more successful if they had listened to her, right? But these are the young firebrand ministers. They're 20-something, fresh out of graduate school or seminary, and I may not listen to a woman. Many can argue that, this concept of sexism is even rooted in Abrahamic religions. In fact, we know that because we've done shows on it right here on this platform. So extremely problematic, but she doesn't get her flowers. But here on the Movement She Speaks and Bequaline Network, she will get her flowers because, once again, we're chronicling. This is part 6 of a 120 part series where we're chronicling the life and legacies and, of course, more importantly, the work of great Pan-Africanists at home and throughout the diaspora in their work to help restore African people to our traditional greatness. And we're doing this not because we just want to provide a rendition of Pan-African activists, but also because we think it's important that we study their work so that we can learn how to make a better world for African people in the future. So something that many people may not be aware of is the work that she did in terms of fighting and advocating for Black brothers and sisters in South Africa in their fight against apartheid. So this was a sister who she always made sure, as Marcus Garvey said, you could find her in the whirlwind. Marcus Garvey said, look for me in the whirlwind, right? And I would argue that Ella Jo Baker was someone that you would always find in the whirlwind, willing to put her life on the line to make sure that African people's lives were better, irrespective of where we were in the world. So definitely want to give a shout out to, of course, Queen Mother Ella Jo Baker from the VA. Shout out to Norfolk, Tidewater region, 7 cities, the whole 9. Newport News, they call it bad news. Portsmouth, Virginia Beach, the whole 9. But I think it's very important. I've been in organizations that operate from that philosophy of a democratic leadership model, also known as a cephalist leadership model, in which, of course, decisions have to be made on a consensus basis. And as a result, there is no singular leader because, as I said it before, we tend to find these type of initiatives or organizations become a cult of personality. But LMA, you mentioned the manosphere. A lot of people simply parrot Kevin Samuels' talking points, even though they really don't understand what he's actually talking about, right? I remember I was part of a Facebook group where the guy said, well, I'm going to be a Christian because Kevin Samuels was a Christian. Right?
What?
Yes, I'm not making this up. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
So okay. That's one of the problems of having charismatic leadership. So people tend to become uncritical and simply parrot and follow and emulate what said leader is doing. And they do this in a manner that's typically uncritical as well.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so when the guy put up the post and was talking about and so there was a lot of brothers in the group who was like, well, I understand you want to be a Christian, but the claims you're making are ahistorical as opposed to actual facts and world history, and the guy ended up taking the post down.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
so
crazy.
That's one of the problems. A great example was Tariq Nasheed. And much of what he's doing with FBA, we find individuals to where it's a call to personality so much that individuals are even emulating his mannerisms, his talking points. You dig, you feel me? You know, extremely problematic behavior, right? We see this in the Nation of Islam, where there's a call to personality where I saw a brother once in a nation who actually had his hair styled in the same manner as Farrakhan.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So tends to be a problem. And we talk about menticide. Many people misuse the term or use it in a manner that is extremely liberal. But menticide, by definition, is the inability to think critically and independently. right? And we tend to find that when people are in organizations where there's charismatic leadership, a great example, and Ella Jo Baker talked about this, was, of course, the Black church, right? And one of the critiques of the Black church is that, of course, there's a high level, the parishioners are 80 to 85% female, but the leadership, the hierarchy is what male. Now, many have argued, particularly from a Black women's studies standpoint, that if women wanted to be in a church that had female leadership, they could simply join one, right? And that is true. But we saw them trying to use that model in, of course, the civil rights movement as well. And the problem with that is because of that discrimination, it led women to sisters in the struggle turn into feminism, because no one wants to be part of any organization, movement, initiative, or program, and but they aren't full and equal participants. No one.
Yeah.
Right. And I give the example, being the baby in my family, being the youngest. There were times when my brother and sister, my sister's the oldest than my brother than myself, where they would be engaging in certain activities and they would say, no, you just have to watch. So guess what I would do? To find I don't want to do this at all. I'm leaving and I'm going somewhere else. I'm playing with my friends.
Yeah.
So once again, when we talk about doing this work, we want to make sure that we are not discriminating against our own people, because you could possibly turn a potential ally into an enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a key that one thing that Ms. Baker was talking about in regards to running the civil rights movement the same way that the Black churches ran.
Yes, sir.
Because like you said, it's a very patriarchal or male chauvinist religion, whereas though in the Bible it actually says, particularly in the Old Testament, that it isn't a place for a woman to even speak.
Well, that's actually the New Testament.
Or in the New Testament, okay, yeah.
Yeah, the Apostle
where it's
Paul,
not a place.
Book of Timothy, 2 Timothy, epistle written by the Apostle Paul.
Right. Yeah. So it's not a woman's place to preach to men. So you even see, like, in a lot of churches today where it'll have like a female pastor, there'll be like a lot of issues of
Right.
whether or not that's keeping up with the tenets of the religion in itself. But one thing,
Dr. John Henry Clarke called Abrahamic religions male chauvinist murder cults. So male chauvinist Abrahamic murder cults. But go right ahead, brother.
Yeah, and then the preacher, tends to be the most outspoken individual, and he can gain a following by his ability to speak charismatically and engage the people, by with his words, But if you're dealing in a democracy, it isn't about who can impress the most people with the way they talk. It's just about the consensus, and the person who might not be the best orator, might have decent opinions. And you can even there were even instances where in the Bible itself where they said that Moses, who wasn't a good speaker, he had a stuttering problem. He supposedly led the Israelites out of Egypt, out of bondage, into Israel. So yeah, so I think it needs to be if you want to run it like the church, what you're going to find yourself doing is the most outgoing, outspoken individual will be the one that's going to start leading the group. You got different types of people. You got leaders and you got followers, but I feel that the democratic process would be the best to get a consensus. Because once you got a consensus and you got everyone dedicated to the movement, then that's when you can really get things done.
Right. And the other issue is typically when you have individuals who we talk about silver-tongued snake oil salesmen, they tend to be very manipulative as well. And we see this in the Black church. Every time we turn around, every time we open a newspaper or, of course, watch news on YouTube or even on television or any other medium, we tend to find stories of these so-called preachers engaging in behavior that's extremely unbecoming, particularly sexual in nature, with young children. So one of the things a lot of people say, you have to respect someone who's a man of God. That shit don't mean nothing to me. Please. Matter of fact, if you tell me something like that, I'm going to think that you're manipulative, and I'm going to tell you, get the French toast out of here. Right. So I digress. But yeah, and even Dr. Amos Wilson argues that you should not affiliate or have anyone in the position of leadership in any organization that has some type of religious affiliation, because what happens is they would then try to use that religious affiliation, I'm a man of God, so on and so forth, to usurp being held accountable. So, of course, something to, of course, consider. Brother LMA, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, just to that last kind of point you made about the religious aspect, one of the things I always think about was like, what happens when there's a line in the sand and it's black people on one side and your religion on the other. What side are you going to choose?
So we see what happens. Yeah.
I think, going back to a previous topic that you had about, should Islam choose black people or their religion? I can't remember the exact topic, the title of that video. But I was thinking to myself that, for people like you and I, we're kind of lucky because our race and our philosophy, our worldview are kind of one and the same. So when we defend our race, we're defending our philosophy. And when we defend our philosophy, we're defending our race. Whereas people who are religious, they have to kind of choose. When these two things don't conflict, then they can live life, happily, but eventually they will. And eventually, people are going to have to, it's going to be, the rest of the Muslim world on one side, and then black people on the other, and then you're going to have these black Muslims who are going to have to choose. And I'm not as confident they're going to choose us. I mean, but it's not just Muslim, but it could be Christians, Jews. It could be anybody who has a belief that's, a religion that does not center their race, and they could be susceptible to, any type of charismatic religious leader, that can speak against it. Because we always seen these pastors who always talk about, thank God for slavery, because without slavery, we would have never known Jesus. You know what I'm saying? I don't want that guy anywhere near me. I don't want that guy in any organization that I'm a part of, because he's already come.
I'm glad you brought that up. I can recall there was a time. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. There was a time when I was an undergrad where a sister, we were having this conversation at the Black Culture Center at my undergraduate institution. Shout out to Wright State University family. Go Raiders, right? And the sister said, well, and this is back when I used to, just put it kind of nicely, I used to spaz on people, right? If they said something that was nonsensical or ahistorical, of course. And so the sister said, well, my grandmother said that we benefited from slavery because it taught us about God. And I lost it. Like, you stupid woman. And your grandmother, I was like, she's the old person, not an elder. And I said, if you knew anything about your history, you would know that Black people always believe in God. I said, what are you talking? So I had just run off, and of course she just shut up and didn't say anything. But when I think back, I could have handled that situation a lot better. Yeah. But once again, my angst that we see the church even promoting pseudo misinformation, promoting ahistorical claims in order to promote their religion, extremely problematic, and it leads to, of course, miseducation and unfortunately self-hatred.
Yeah.
So, of course, these are some of the issues that we face. We understand that anti-Blackness is ubiquitous. And I always tell my students, when about ubiquitous, we even find it in religion. And most students, they question anti-Blackness isn't in religion. But by the end of the semester, they're like, yo, you was right. You know what I mean? So, of course, something to be cognizant of. Once again, family, tap in. You're watching themoviespeaks.com, the Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. And, of course, Beacon Line Network, the Pan-African Social Media Extraordinaire, and the home of African Center News and Information. And this is part 6 of our groundbreaking and audacious Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we chronicle the life, legacy, and work of great Pan-Africans of the past in order to make a better future in the world for African people. And today we're chronicling the work of Ella Jo Baker, Queen Mother Ella Jo Baker, one of the leading philosophers and thought leaders of the Civil Rights Movement, co-founder of the SCLC and Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And of course, she worked with the NAACP. She advocated for, of course, suffrage, women's suffrage, and of course, fought against apartheid in South Africa, one of the greatest Pan-Africans that you probably never heard of and never known. And of course, one of the pantheon of Queen Mothers that we're going to chronicle in this, of course, groundbreaking series Pan-African Leadership Series, past, present, and future. So if you're watching, family, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. And hit the notification bell. We are on the road to 10K at Lumumba Speaks and 200K at Bitcoin Line Network. You're watching, of course, Lumumba Speaks and Bitcoin Line Network on Pan-African Saturday. What's the word, family?
I had a question, particularly about, like, you know, we talk about democratized leadership versus charismatic leadership. There was I can't remember the exact episode. There was a period where it was us and the Black Panthers went at it. Like
Yes, you're talking about the US organization and the Black Panther Party.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Right. Because and forgive me, I know with the Black Panthers, I know the three main leaders was Eldridge Cleaver, Huey P. Newton, and I can't remember the
Bobby Seale.
third. Bobby Seale. Okay, they were like the three main leaders of that organization. And I know with us, was it who's the guy?
Klinga, yes.
Malala Klinga, yeah. So, because was he? So I guess that's, you know, also like a, you know, a you know, con versus, you know, charismatic leader, because like I said, once their ego gets into it, you know, because I would wonder if those two organizations, us and Black Panther, were more democratized, would they been able to be pit against each other the way they were?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, both of those organizations, we know COINTELPRO played a role in fomenting, of course, mistrust, distrust, and of course, violence amongst those two organizations. But that is a good question. Good question.
Yes, I guess that's another point for democratized, or what was the word you used? It's called headless leadership, but what was the word?
Acephalous.
Acephalous leadership. Yeah.
I mean, I'll as well.
Yeah, I'll have to give it some thought, because it's like, I mean, I guess the main thing is like, how does one, you know, keep cohesion and keep direction, and, you know, obviously, I think, you know, obviously more heads are better than one, but, you know, like most, I think of like a corporate, you know, corporate organization where you have the board, but you got the chairman of the board, and you get the CEO, and then the C-suite. You know what I'm saying? But you can kind of tell who's the leader of the two organizations. And I was just thinking to myself, like, okay, when you say it's a leaders list, like, do you really mean leaders list, or is it just kind of like whoever floats to the top, and whatever the consensus is, that's just the way that they.
Well, no, you have to actually. So you have instead of when I say acephalous, that means that. So let's say you were an organization that had 12 people. Then there were 12 co-leaders or co-heads of the organization. So when you made decisions, you all had to come to a consensus where you actually all agreed.
Okay, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that, you know, I think a lot of Black people have kind of fallen in love with the Messiah idea. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be, honestly, I do think that that's just going to have to be something we're going to have to break out of. I think, like I said, you know, like John Henrik Clarke says, you know, you bury the man, carry on the plan, you know, if something happens to the leader. And I think that, yeah, because, you know, like I said, you definitely want to make sure that, you know, everyone's moving that direction. Because, like I said, you want to keep moving. And like I said, if one person falls, you got to keep going, because you can't just, you know, let the whole thing disintegrate. And now now you're just in the history books about what, you know, cool things you did, as opposed to what you was, as opposed to what your organization is.
Absolutely. You know? Absolutely. Once again, family, if you're watching, tap in. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Tap in, be part of the conversation. We're discussing, of course, a life legacy, and most importantly, the work of Ella Jo Baker. If you're unfamiliar with Ella Jo Baker, put a 2 in the chat. If you're familiar with Ella Jo Baker, put a 1 in the chat. But you're more than welcome to tap in and be part of the conversation where we're discussing, of course, young people being the forefront, the vanguard of the movement for, of course, Black liberation, African liberation, and should we have more democratic leadership or a single charismatic leader in terms of Black organizations. So tap in, family, be part of the conversation. This is part 6 of our Pan-African Leadership series, where we chronicle the life, legacy, and work of great Pan-African leaders of the past in order to learn from them to make a better world for African people in the future.
One point about the young leadership versus the older leadership, that was a tough one for me too. I think because we have, usually I would say, you kind of want your more experienced people leading the show, who, just got more world experience and stuff like that. But we kind of
Right.
see that, especially, now that the way the society is changing so quickly that, you'll have someone who, what made a joke about the boomer, like how they're just so out of touch with, current reality that, I ain't gonna say that they're useless, but their information is only
Antiquated.
useful. It's antiquated, right? It's only useful for someone in like the 1950s. You know what I'm saying? There's a joke about, the boomer tells the young guy, okay, you want to get a job, you just print out your resume, you go down to the office, and you give the boss a good firm handshake, and then tell him you want to work for the job, you want to work for him. It's like, no, that doesn't work. So, but I think that, like I said, with technology and just society norms now changing, I don't even know if, in a couple of years will the once you hit past a certain age, can you even relate to the younger crowd? I think it's, because I can imagine, what I'm saying, like you go into some of these organizations and you get like this, like I said, this guy who's just stuck in his ways, but he's older. But I guess it's not necessarily a question of young versus old, but I think like the older really has to realize that you really have to work to stay in tune with society and just keep in touch, because because I see it now. It's very easy to fall out of touch. I mean, I was looking on Twitter, and people are making jokes like, joking on the millennials as if we're like the old guys, and that really like kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, oh wow. He was just like, oh my God, this millennial humor. Oh, look at this old millennial. I was like, oh shit. So I had to like clutch my pearls for a second. I'm like, man, we became the old guys on the block. I couldn't believe it,
Yes, sir.
But it is a point. I think we just need to really, for the older crowd, or just even people coming up, you got to realize that it's very easy for you to become out of touch with the youth. And once you become out of touch, your leadership can become less effective.
I would agree.
And
Go right ahead.
Yeah, and I believe that, on a social level, yeah, I believe that a person can get out of touch. But if we're talking about business, that's the biggest unifying factor of human beings. And we can say, all of these things about capitalism, and it does have some negative aspects to it, especially if it's a zero-sum game capitalism where, there has to be a winner and a loser. But, the positive thing that capitalism does is it forces you to interact with people. So I think that if we
You
were
sound like
to
a salesman, brother.
what's that?
You sound like a salesman.
Yes, sir. It forces people to interact with each other. So if I want to if I depend on the black, shoe salesman in my neighborhood every day to provide me and my family with shoes, then of course, we're going to gain a relationship. Or I depend on the grocery store that's black owned in my neighborhood. Of course, we're going to build a relationship because his growth and is beneficial for the both of us. So we all of that is working together where if we stay more business oriented. And then when it comes to socialization, then yeah, maybe if you're an older guy, maybe you want to play some spades and smoke some cigars. If you're a millennial or Gen Xer. But if you're a younger person like a Gen Z, maybe you want to play some video games instead. So yeah, I think when it comes to business, being business oriented, I think that there's no age limit or age parameters. I can go to a stand and buy lemonade from a kid, if they're selling it. If they do a good job and they're courteous, then I'll come back to it. So that's the way business is. So I think if we stay business oriented, and I think another thing that'll help a democratic organization is if we were to have like a stipend that all of us contributed to the foundation on a monthly or annual, biannual basis. And then, based on the treasury that we build up as a unit, we can use that for other empowerment initiatives, whether it be to, push some agenda in political spheres that'll benefit us, or maybe it'd be another venture that we think would be lucrative for us. Also, we be able to help each other. So if we have like a young brother who, maybe is facing some serious time in jail because, unfairly, then, we would have like maybe some he can pay for his attorney fees, or we can keep some attorneys in our organization, all kinds of stuff, So I think it was business wise. I think that's the most powerful thing that we could do as a unit, democratically.
Okay. Any thoughts from you, LMA?
No, that was solid.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Very good. Well, family, appreciate you tapping in. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. Matter of fact, please share. Like I said before, one of our goals is to, of course, hit 10K subscribers on Lumumba Speaks, and of course 200K on Beacon Network. And we can't do that without your help out there in these YouTube streets. Until next time, y'all know what to do. Always bet on black. Peace. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on black. Peace.